Hi everyone, meteorologist Steve Caparata back with another episode of Coast and Climate. Coming up in a few weeks, there's a group called the Environment and Health Council of Louisiana that's holding a conference right here in Baton Rouge that I think might be of a lot of interest to people here locally and really all across South Louisiana. The topic for that conference, the theme is Coastal Resilience Louisiana Initiative. So I wanted to bring in a guest today that knows a whole lot about this conference. That's Dr. Ed Overton. You might remember him. We had him in one of our early episodes of Coast and Climate. So first off, Dr. Overton, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about this conference, but before we get into the conference itself, probably a lot of people might not even know about this group, the Environment Health Council of Louisiana. Can you tell us a little bit about what the group is and how it got established and really what its purpose is?
Sure. Well, it was established about the time that I actually moved to Baton Rouge back in 1983. I think there was lots of issues associated with health and the chemical corridor, and so a group of professionals, Sean McGlynn, some of the Philip West, some of the people out at LSU, and a variety of community leaders put together a group called the Environmental and Health Council of Louisiana. At least that's what it is currently called. It's had two or three names, but it evolved into that. And the idea was to try to bring in factual information about topics associated with either environmental health or the environment, the coast, those areas of Louisiana that appear to be fairly contentious in the public domain. In other words, we wanted to try to have a forum, workshops, things like this, where we could talk about those issues and present both sides. We're not an advocacy group. We're a factual information group, getting people together and talking about it and trying to come together with sensible solutions. So it's a 501c3 foundation, strictly volunteer people trying to work together to bring focus to important issues associated with South Louisiana.
So this year's topic is all about coastal resilience. Tell us a little bit about the conference that's going to address that topic. It's coming up on November 10th, correct? Tell us about the location and what people need to know about this conference if they want to get involved.
Gosh, yeah, it's November 10th. It's at Pennington Biomedical Research Center. They have a conference facility. It's kind of on the backside of their building. If you drive down Perkins Road, you see a big long building. You drive around behind it, and there's the conference center. The conference starts at 8 o'clock. We provide a free lunch for the first 200 visitors that register on our webpage. So it goes through lunch and adjourns around 1:30 or 2, depending on the amount of discussion. So it's a kind of a morning and early afternoon conference. And what we're going to have is we got special speakers talking about the government perspective associated with coastal resilience. Then there's academic research that's going on at LSU and other places will be discussed. We've got a local perspective. The president of Lafourche Parish is coming and talking to us about their thoughts on coastal resiliency. And finally, we talk about a little bit of the history of coastal resilience and efforts, as well as the mechanisms that control what happens to the mighty Mississippi, the flow. Sam Bentley is coming in, and he is certainly an expert in river dynamics. And we rely on the Mississippi River for so much, but we can't undo Mother Nature. Mississippi River provides certain amount of sediment that's going to build that did build our coast and will continue to build our coast. But we need to use that wisely. And in the past, we've not always we've dammed the rivers, we've built levees, and that really affects the natural flow of the Mississippi rivers. Again, all of this is part of coastal resilience. So we've got government issues, academic issues, the history, facts of it, and then the local perspective. And it should be a really nice conference and allows for for discussion with these people that are actually representing key drivers in this effort in coastal Louisiana.
So I went ahead and signed up myself this morning. I'm looking forward to it. And let me just be clear: this is open to the public, correct?
It is open to the public, and it doesn't cost you a dime.
All right, good to know. So looking forward to it. It's a great lineup of speakers. You mentioned some of the topics. I've pulled up the agenda here. So it gets underway with the president of your group, it looks like, addressing the audience. And then you've got a professor from Pennington Biomedical, one of your board members, Charles Sutcliffe, the Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Louisiana. And then you see the list goes on. I'll scroll down here just a little bit. Dr. Nina Lamb. I was actually a former professor of mine as a graduate student at LSU. Had her for a couple of courses. Very familiar with her. Very sharp. Does some great work. And you see wrapping up around 1:30. So this really should be a great event. All right, let's talk a little bit about this. You talked about some of the key talking points, but what ultimately is the group hoping to accomplish with the conference? You mentioned a little bit, but what ultimately are we looking to get done? You know, it's one thing to talk about things, but you have to turn words into actionable items, right?
Right. And that's the first thing, is to try to get a broad public understanding of this. Now, a small conference is not going to cover everybody in Baton Rouge, but there's got to be first steps. We've got to try to get information about how important coastal resiliency is. If we don't do that, this is all about what our state is going to look like in 20 to 50 to 70 years down the line. Coastal resiliency, it's not going to change anything right now, but it's going to be what our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren will be dealing with in many years to come. But if we don't start to talk about this, try to figure out what needs to be done. Things can be done to improve. Things can be done that will cause damage. So the public needs to be involved. Certainly, we've got government initiatives, major billion-dollar initiatives. You know, in 2010, we lived through the horrible Deepwater Horizon oil spill. One of the few good things that came out of that bloody spill was that we've got upwards of $7 or $8 billion that can be used to help restore some of our coastline. So the question is, how can we do this? How can we use that money wisely, effectively? That's part of coastal resiliency, because that restoring those lost marshes won't happen overnight. It will take a long time. At the same time that we are doing the restoring of the coast, we're going to cause some businesses to be disrupted. And that's going to cause a great deal of consternation in the oyster business and in some of the fishery businesses in coast. If we don't do it, we're going to experience massive loss of coastal marshes. If we do it, some people are going to get damaged and their businesses are going to get damaged. These positions need to be highlighted and pointed out. It's all part of coastal resiliency. We just seen a dramatic what happens when you don't plan for the future. When we saw what happened to Hurricane Ian when it went in over at Fort Myers and Fort Myers Beach and those islands over there, just utter total destruction, because there was no plan for what would happen if a hurricane came through, and they lost whole communities. We're talking really about not just communities, but our whole coastal area. We're facing a loss from canals that were dredged and let salt water into freshwater areas. You know, saltwater grasses and freshwater grasses don't grow together. So you either got saltwater grasses or you got freshwater grass. When you got freshwater grasses in wetlands, then you let saltwater in, the wetlands die and go away. And that's basically what's happened when we dredge our coastal marshes and cause the existing land loss. So all of this is part of understanding coastal resiliency, and it's really about not now, but about our children. and our grandchildren and where we're going to be in 50 years.
Yeah, I want to point out a couple of things. So first off, behind me, kind of illustrating this land loss, this was an incredible satellite image, just got recently shared by somebody on Twitter. You know, a lot of people, when I shared this, are really surprised to see the Bird's Foot Delta here, the Mississippi River, what it looks like. Everybody's aware of the land loss, but I think people, because this is happening gradually over time, even though the rate is fairly quick, when they saw this, I got a lot of wow reactions and kind of holy cow to how quickly and how much land we've lost. The second thing I wanted to point out about what you said that I think is a key point, a lot of what we're talking about is not so much about us. It's about our kids and grandkids and future generations. We are losing communities, right? So one that's kind of become the face of this battle is this Isle de Jean Charles down along the coast, Native American community that's all but gone at this point. They've pretty much lost just about all the land around them, and a lot of them are now relocating inland. We're going to have more of these tough decisions going forward about what to save and what can't be saved. What do you see as some of our biggest challenges going forward when it comes to maybe increasing our coastal resiliency here in Louisiana?
Well, I think we've got to decide what we're going to do with the sediment that we've got. Now, the Mississippi River changes its direction every several 100,000 years, and it's been where it is now for several 100,000 years. So, it has tried to change directions. I think it tried back in 73, 70, 80 time frame, and almost did. But we are containing that river with a series of levees and flow control structures now. So this is going to keep the river as it is, because New Orleans and of course support of Baton Rouge, New Orleans is a big economic driver in South Louisiana, as well as the energy infrastructure for the whole coast. So coastal resiliency right now is basically trying to stay the same. Now, a number of people are suggesting, why don't we work with Mother Nature and let the river change? Of course, if that happened, cities like not Lake Charles, but Morgan City would be kind of wiped off the map if you had Mississippi flood flowing through the Atchafalaya Basin. So all of this is controlling the river and controlling what South Louisiana has been during our lifetime, and where do we want it to be for our children, for our grandchildren? What is going to happen? I know a number of ring levees are being built, protecting those areas along the coastline now. When I was just first came to Louisiana, there was a lot of talk about building control structures that would keep floodwaters from getting into Lake Pontchartrain. And there was a lot of talk, nothing happened. And lo and behold, we had our friend Katrina came along, and there was no flood control, and just wiped out whole sections of those areas, even on the western side of Lake Pontchartrain and Mirepoix, up in those areas. So this is what coastal resilience is all about. Talking now about what we can do, wisely use our resources, and then try to protect what we have and protect them for the future.
There's one other thing I wanted to hit on with you. I failed to mention at the beginning. You're a professor emeritus in the Department of Environmental Sciences at LSU. Spent a long time there. You're very well versed in the oil and gas industry. So one of the key questions we always have when we talk about our coast and coastal resiliency is, how do we kind of reconcile this dichotomy of the oil and gas industry? There's no doubt what they've done historically has done damage to the coast, but we all know the importance of the oil and gas and energy industries here in Louisiana. So how do we reconcile that? That's a complicated question, but what do you say to that?
Boy, I wish I had a good answer for that. What I do think it's important to know is the energy industry is the oil and gas is not just important for Louisiana, but for our country. I mean, we're going through a situation now where the gas prices, the gasoline prices are extremely high. It's causing a great deal of political consternation, but all of that is associated with bringing oil and gas either out of the ground or from foreign ports. We got the offshore oil terminal here in Louisiana where we bring in oil from other places in the world, and so it can be refined and produced over here. So energy is exceedingly important. On the other hand, it's pretty controversial because when you burn hydrocarbon fuels, you are producing carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is what we call a greenhouse gas. And the greenhouse gas concentration in the world has been steadily rising, and that means that it's trapping more and more heat. What are the consequences of this? Well, we had a pretty crazy summer, and we got a pretty crazy time now. A horribly wet August, and it hadn't rained since Labor Day. So I'm hoping that you're going to tell us that we got some rain coming today for the first time in almost a month and a half. But is this strange weather pattern, is that associated with this process of global warming? So all of these factors are part of a very complicated picture. We need energy. We use energy in everything we do. Going to work, running our air conditioners, running our lights, cooking, everything uses fossil fuel energies. Some of it can be offset by photocells, and Louisiana is certainly starting to add a lot of those photovoltaic farms to produce electricity. And there's some talk about wind farming, at least wind farming off the coast. Those are great as long as the wind's blowing, but when the wind's not blowing, what are you going to do? So you got to supplement those energy sources with other types of energy producers like fossil fuels, natural gas fired turbines that can come on at night, don't have to run during the day, things like that. So it's a complicated issue, but the energy is extremely important to the well-being both of Louisiana and of the United States.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We've had Chet Chess on this podcast. He's the director of Port Fourchon down there. So we've talked all about that, and they're making efforts down at the port to go more green and monitoring their greenhouse gas emissions. So they're taking steps to do things in a better way. There's one last thing I want to mention. You referred this to me, but Bob Marshall is a great environmental reporter for The Advocate and NOLA.com, and you kind of pointed out he wrote a story, but he really linked to another website called followtheoil.org, and it's got a really neat story map to it. But if you get the chance to go check out this site created by a scientist, you can kind of see how our coastline has really been modified, especially through all those man-made canals that were made, especially in the past, right? I think we've gotten a little better on that, but so much of the damage was done in the past, and it's just hard to stem the tide on that, reverse it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when we started extracting our natural resources, everybody was pretty happy because we've got the natural resources. For example, Steve, there's 4.5 million people in Louisiana, and there's 16 refineries in Louisiana. In Florida, there's 22 million people and no refineries, zero, right? So those people that are driving all around Florida are driving on Louisiana and Texas gasoline. It's just amazing. We don't have the beaches and the climate that Florida has. So, but what we do have is natural resources, and one of those natural resources is the oil and gas. So it's a part of the money that provides the taxes for our roads, our schools, all of the infrastructure around the state. But at the same time, it damages the environment to take them out, to get those resources out. I think a lot of the damage was done before we realized that dredging these canals would cause as much damage as it did. I hope that we're not still allowing that to happen, but certainly the damage was done. That to me was resiliency. People were not looking ahead back in the 30s and 40s and 50s when these canals were dredged. And now we're seeing what happened when you didn't think ahead about the damages. So to me, that's the idea of coastal resiliency. Let's look at what we got now and see where we're going to be and try to protect so that our South Louisiana way of life will be around for the kids and the grandkids. That's what the conference is really all about, is raising the awareness. And we hope that people will come and talk, and then maybe we can have a conference too next year to talk about what we think we've learned. I mean, there's a whole process. This is not a one-time process. This is an ongoing process of trying to do the best for the people of Louisiana in terms of our coastal future.
All right, it's a great point. This is a really a long-term issue. We tend to focus on what we're doing now, but we've got to think big picture and long-term as we tackle these problems. All right, Dr. Ed Overton, thank you so much for being here this morning. We'll look forward to the conference coming up on November 10th. As I said, I've signed up, so I'll see you out there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Steve.
All right, thank you again. So that conference, the Environment Health Council of Louisiana, it's coming up November 10th at Pennington Biomedical. It gets underway at 8 o'clock in the morning, runs through 1:30 in the afternoon. You can register on their website. That's ehcla.org. Right on the front page, they've got a link about the conference. Click on it there. You can register. As Dr. Overton just told you, it is open to the public. So should be some good discussions that day, and hopefully we can all learn a little bit, maybe come up with some good ideas on how to tackle these complex issues. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode, I should say, of Coast and Climate. You can always catch them live here on WAFB Plus Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and you can watch them on demand on our website, WAFB.com, and our YouTube channel as well. We'll see you next Thursday at 10 o'clock.